This man's wife gave birth to a white baby, and he left her. 7 years later, DNA revealed shocking results. This story is jaw-dropping. Watch till the end to find out what really happened. What would you do if the love of your life betrayed you in a way you never imagined? How would you react if you were blindsided by a truth that tore your family apart? It all began in a small, tightly knit community, where Michael and Angela were seen as the perfect couple. They were the kind of pair you might envy, two ambitious, caring people who seemed perfectly matched. Michael, a hardworking man with a quiet confidence, had fallen head over heels for Angela's grace, intelligence, and humor. They were both African American and took pride in their shared heritage, weaving their identities into every part of their lives. Friends and family saw them as soulmates who had conquered life together. But all of that changed on the day Angela gave birth. But what happens when trust is shattered in an instant? How does a person react when faced with the unthinkable? Michael rushed to the hospital with excitement and joy, only to freeze the moment he saw the baby in Angela's arms. The baby was fair-skinned, with light blonde hair and blue eyes, a striking contrast to her parents' darker features. Silence fell as Michael's heart pounded, confusion filling his mind. His eyes met Angela's, searching for an explanation. Was this really his child? The days that followed were a storm of questions and accusations. Michael, who had always trusted Angela implicitly, couldn't reconcile what he was seeing. He asked the questions racing through his mind, but the answers felt as hollow as the disbelief in his heart. How could his wife give birth to a child who bore no resemblance to either of them? Angela insisted there was no affair, but Michael struggled to believe it. He felt betrayed, humiliated, and utterly lost. How could he continue loving someone he no longer trusted? Could he even look at her without questioning everything they'd built together? Would you stay in a marriage filled with so many doubts? Could love survive a betrayal that cut this deep? Unable to find peace, Michael did the unthinkable. He left Angela and their newborn, unable to face a family he no longer believed was his. Over time, he tried to move on, though the pain lingered like an open wound. He felt he had no choice but to start a new life. Angela, devastated and heartbroken, was left to raise their daughter alone, despite her pleas and protests that she'd never been unfaithful. 7 years passed in silence. Michael had not seen his daughter once. Each birthday, each Christmas, Angela would send him photos and updates, but he never replied. He had tried to erase that part of his life, convinced he had done the right thing by walking away. But then one day, a letter arrived. It was from Angela. And this time, she wasn't writing just to update him on their daughter. She was demanding answers. The letter was an invitation, no, a challenge for Michael to do a DNA test. Angela insisted, one final time, that she had been faithful and begged him to see the truth for himself. She wanted him to see the truth that he had walked away from. What would you do in his shoes? Could you ignore a plea that carried such weight? Could he refuse, knowing it might be his only chance to know the truth? Michael's hands shook as he held the DNA kit Angela had sent. Every part of him feared the results, afraid of reopening wounds that had never truly healed. But he took the test. Days passed in excruciating silence, and finally, the results came in. What happens when the truth defies all your expectations? The DNA results were irrefutable. Michael was the biological father of the little girl he'd abandoned all those years ago. She was his, and always had been. But how was it possible? How could his daughter be born with such distinct features, one so unlike his own or Angela's? The answer, it turned out, was a rare genetic phenomenon known as genetic throwback or atavism, where a child may inherit traits from distant ancestors rather than immediate ones. It was a quirk of genetics that had betrayed their expectations and shattered their trust. Michael felt a new kind of guilt and grief. He had left his family based on an assumption, one that had proven false. He had abandoned his daughter, missed her first words, her first steps, and all the moments that should have been theirs. He thought of all the birthdays he hadn't celebrated, the milestones he hadn't shared, and his heart broke all over again. Would Angela ever forgive him? Could he be a father now, after everything he'd put her and their daughter through? With trepidation, he reached out to Angela, who agreed to meet him. But the look in her eyes was one of hurt and betrayal. Still, for their daughter's sake, she allowed him to see her. He was astonished at the little girl who stood before him, a child who was, indeed, a part of him. He saw her resilience, her spark, and was overwhelmed with love and regret. Over time, Michael tried to mend the broken pieces of his relationship with both his wife and daughter. He dedicated himself to making amends, spending time with his daughter, and rebuilding the trust he had so easily cast aside. But every moment was shadowed by the past, by the memory of the years they'd lost. But can a family rebuild itself after such a deep wound? How do you regain trust that was broken so completely? Michael and Angela's journey back to each other was long and filled with challenges. Forgiveness did not come easily, and the shadow of what had happened was always present. Yet in each moment spent together, they found reasons to try again. Would you have reacted differently? How strong does love have to be to survive such a test? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, what would you have done if you'd been in Michael's place?
If you've watched this far, comment which country you're watching from and leave a 100 in the comment section, because you are type of person that likes to finish what they started. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to get notified whenever we drop new videos.